welcome. I'm Suma Katauka and you are watching the Africa Brief on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top stories this hour. Cameroon's presidential election results are expected soon, with opposition candidate Issa Chiroma claiming victory, while unofficial results now show incumbent Paul Biya in the lead. The Constitutional Council will announce the final results by Sunday. Chiroma has called for protests if the results are deemed falsified. Sudan's capital, Khartoum, was targeted by drone strikes for the third straight day with attacks on military facilities and the airport. The strikes come as the Sudanese army and paramilitary RSF continue their conflict, while diplomatic efforts to end the war persist. At least 40 migrants have died after their boat sank off the coast of Tunisia. The boat carrying around 70 people sank near the port of Mahdia. Most of the victims were from sub-Saharan Africa. Authorities have opened an investigation into this incident as the country faces pressure over migrant crisis. A Qatar Airlines flight from Port Sudan has landed in Khartoum, marking the first domestic flight since war erupted over 2 years ago. This marks a potential reopening of air traffic after the army recaptured the airport from the Rapid Support Forces. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has arrived in Brussels for the first ever EU-Egypt summit aimed at strengthening political and economic ties under the 2024 Strategic and Comprehensive Partnership. The summit also focused on Egypt's crucial role in maintaining the Gaza ceasefire and leading post-conflict reconstruction efforts. Syrian authorities have arrested a former military officer accused of executing detainees at the notorious Saidinaya prison during the rule of ousted leader Bashar al-Assad. The prison, long symbolic of Assad's brutal repression, which has been linked to thousands of torture and execution cases. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hints at opposition to any Turkish security forces being deployed in Gaza during a meeting with UN on the second day of Vance's visit. Israel has also buried more than 50 bodies handed over, while Vance has expressed optimism that the ceasefire could hold, and US Senator Marco Rubio is expected to visit Israel soon. Israeli lawmakers have the advancement of West Bank annexation bills as global pressure mounts for Israel to comply with the I.C.J. ruling on Palestinian rights. UN Chief Antonio Guterres has urged Israel to abide by the court's decision, while UN rights expert Francesca Albanese has condemned the US-brokered Gaza ceasefire plan as inadequate to stop what she called as genocide. Cameroon's presidential election results are expected soon, with opposition candidate Issa Chiroma claiming victory despite unofficial results showing incumbent President Paul Biya in the lead. The Constitutional Court is set to announce final results by Sunday. Meanwhile, the Council has dismissed all petitions challenging the October 12th election, including allegations of fraud and ballot stuffing. The judges argued that petitioners lacked sufficient evidence. Earlier, Issa Chiroma has called for protests if the Constitutional Council announces what he considers falsified results from the October 12th election. Chiroma's supporters had already demonstrated in several cities. Paul Biya's party had dismissed Chiroma's claims, urging patience for the official verdict. Now for this discussion, we welcome Ayannuga Olugbenga Paul. He's a public affairs analyst, joins us live from Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Paul. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, can you tell us who are these individuals, candidate running for presidential election? Issa Chiroma and Paul Biya.
Yeah, and we also have other candidates like Bello Buba Maigari, Joshua Ose, Akiremuna, Cabral Libby, Carmen Patricia Tomaino, Ndam Njoya. These are the candidates that are all running apart from the two most popular one, which is the incumbent president, Paul Biya, and the leading opposition candidate, Issa Chiroma. And the election has taken several turns. From the campaign, you see that many of the campaign were done for the president, the incumbent president in absentia in some places, with his pictures being used to represent his presence. And he has been in and out of French hospital, and many of the time the travelings were not disclosed to the general public, and so he has not been cited in public for a while. But despite that, the Electoral Commission is declaring that the incumbent president is having a lead of about 59% at the moment, even though they are yet to disclose the eventual winner. But Issa Chiroma has been declaring from about 2 days after the October 12th election that he actually won the election because he was doing, according to him, independent tracking of the election process. And he also gave his own results to reflect that he had about 60% of the votes in the bag. And that is why many of the supporters in Garoua, his stronghold, his town, and also in Yaoundé, they are up in protest. But if we look at the two leading candidates, I maybe from an outsider's point of view, I believe that they are same of the same because Issa Chiroma has also been in government since 1992. And at one point or the other, between 1992 and 96, he was in government and he came back between 2007 and till now. And he is also of the advanced age. So, but generally Cameroon needs a breath of fresh air, and I feel very badly, not just for Cameroonian, especially I feel very badly for the president Paul Biya because what I see from looking at it from an outsider point of view is that the man may not even know what is going on. He may not even be interested because his health. We saw how, for those who learned from history, we saw how Chairman Mao in his later days was kept away from the public by political players who are gaining from him perpetuating himself in government, and they kept it from public view to say, oh, the president made this declaration, made that declaration, whereas the Chinese people didn't see the president in his last days for a very long time, while the power tussle within the cabinet, one side led by his wife, and the information minister that time and two other people, the other side led by the party political bro. And I believe that that is the same thing that is playing out in Cameroon at the moment with the undisclosed nature of the health of the president, Paul Biya. But I believe that Cameroonians, like the bishops in Cameroon, have called out to ensure peace. Cameroon has suffered, especially the English speaking side of the country, have been battered time and over again. And I believe that they should look for peaceful means to agitate for their right, such that they will not be continuing in the carnage that they have suffered for a long time. Because if care is not taken, this is where this election is going to lead to. Paul Biya is 92, and who knows when he's going to go join his ancestors. Who knows? But when he does, will the people who are benefiting and therefore pushing him out there, will they be able to let go? Because with the incidents happening in some French-speaking country in West Africa, the French government is also very careful to back somebody that will not protect their own interests. And so we must look at it from all of this angle, the international angle of the French government's interest, the local angle of the people's desire and expectation, and be able to balance it to understand why this result matters to the Folbia camp and also matters to the people who are supporting Chiroma.
Thank you very much, Ayanuga Olukbenga Paul, for sharing that insight as a public affairs analyst. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we stay in the region. A fuel tanker has exploded in Nigeria's northern Niger state, which has claimed the lives of at least 35 people. The incident occurred on Tuesday on the Bida Agai road when the tanker skidded off the road, spilling petrol, which ignited moments later. According to the Federal Road Safety Corps, the fire engulfed nearby villagers who had rushed to collect the spilled fuel. At least 52 others have been injured and are currently receiving treatment at a local hospital. Tanker explosions are a recurring incident in Nigeria, fueled by the country's poor road infrastructure and limited pipeline system. The explosion's intense blaze has left many victims beyond recognition. This devastating accident highlights ongoing safety concerns in the transportation of petroleum products across the nation. Now we welcome back Ayanuga Olukbenga Paul. He's a public affairs analyst, joins us live from Nigeria. Thank you very much, Mr. Paul, for staying with us. Now, what should government do to make sure that this doesn't occur again? And what more can you tell us about this situation, with this accident in Nigeria?
Well, this accident is one accident too many, and it's really sad because apart from this fuel tanker situation, just a few days ago on another road in the southern part of the country, there was a fatal accident where the vehicle burnt beyond recognition, but that was due to overspeeding and all the passengers, it's an 18-seater bus, all the passengers died. But you will see one common denominator in this incident. Whilst on the one part there is issue of bad road, but most of the time it is not the issue of bad roads that cause majority of the accidents in Nigeria. People watching from outside or who don't have understanding of how these things work will say bad road quickly because they want to give the government a bad name. Yes, there are bad roads everywhere, but some of the fundamental issues that is causing, especially with tanker drivers, is fatigue sometimes, underage driving sometimes, because many of the tanker drivers here have what we call motorboys. That is the assistants to the driver. And sometimes when the driver is tired and they are on road stretch that are not from major city where road safety officers can easily apprehend them, they might ask their motorboys to drive on their behalf. And it's a case of learning by practice in some of those cases. So that tends to give room for accidents. Then also the issue of fatigue, where a driver knows that he's feeling sleepy, he has been driving for days or for several hours and is very tired, but because they want to meet a certain target, they will say, I will endure. And it's in the twinkling of an eye that they might lose consciousness and this accident happen. The other aspect of this accident is the issue of sensitization of the masses. The government have been doing a lot to sensitize the masses about running away once a fuel tanker falls. But unfortunately, the message has not gotten to many rural areas enough, because in many rural areas, they don't have access to Android phones where they could watch some of these messages in video that have been sent out by the government and even private individuals to sensitize people on the danger of going close to a falling petrol tanker. And in many of these rural areas, maybe their local authorities too are not doing enough to do sensitization, apart from the sensitization done at the federal level or maybe even at the state level. And that information gap is what led to this carnage, because with that accident, if people had not gone to scoop for fuel, the carnage may not be more than the driver and maybe his motorbike, or maybe those ones would have even escaped before the vehicle went up in flame and there will be no carnage. But because that sensitization is not well grounded enough, we still have this situation where people die. The other aspect is the response of fire service. So with the exception of maybe Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, and a few city centers in Nigeria, the fire service in many of the states that are not the main city centers are nothing to write home about. And so when such incidents happen, it may take hours instead of minutes. In fact, in some cases, it may take even a whole day before they get to the location where the incident happened, which increases the probability of fire happening. And the particular location where this incident happened, of course, is heat prone. We are almost moving to the period where there is scorching sun, and so even if there are no other things to ignite the petrol, the heat in those areas, which could reach as much as 40 degrees Celsius, 43 degrees Celsius on some days, is enough to ignite the fire in those areas. And I believe these are all what is responsible for it. But at the federal level, the government is doing what it can to sensitize people, to provide facility for safety and all the rest. But the state and the local government need to collaborate more with the federal or with amongst themselves to ensure that when this thing happens, rescue comes quickly and roads are built to ensure that this incident don't even happen at all. And then there should be proper monitoring of drivers, random spot check, because sometimes these drivers hand over to their motorboys to drive for them when they are tired, and sometimes those who don't hand over to their motorboys, when they are supposed to find somewhere to park and sleep, maybe for 30 minutes and 1 hour to regain strength and vitality, they will still be going in that fatigue, which will lead to accidents at the end of the day.
Thank you very much, Ayananga Oluk Benga Paul, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we stay in the region. The Sudanese capital of Khartoum has been targeted by drone strikes for a third consecutive day by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Witnesses have reported hearing the sound of drones flying over the city early today morning, with the drones headed towards military facilities in the airport. Explosions have been heard shortly afterwards. The Khartoum International Airport, which has remained closed for over 2 years, was set to reopen this week, but had to postpone the reopening due to the attacks. Now, these drone strikes are part of the long-standing conflict between the Sudanese army and the RSF, who have been fighting since April 2023. In an earlier visit to the Khartoum International Airport, Sudan's Army Commander General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan has vowed to crush the rebellion and set strict conditions for any future peace process. Let's listen in.
قريبا لن يستطيع أي من كان أن يهدد هذه الأرض الطيبة وأن يهدد السودان، لأننا عازمين على القضاء على هذا التمرد، عازمين على أننا يجب أن نقضي على هذا التمرد، يجب أن لا ندع فرصة لأن يعود هذا التمرد مرة أخرى. صراحة إلى من يزعون إلى أو يتحدثون عن السلام، نحن نرحب بالسلام وكل السودانيين يريدون السلام، السلام المبني على الأسس الوطنية الراسخة، نحن كلنا بنعتبرها هذه مبادئ يجب أن تراعى في كل مبادرة. لا نريد لأي مرتزق أو مليشي أن يكون له أي دور في السودان في المستقبل، لا نريد لأي جهة ساندت الميليشيا بأن يكون لها دور في مستقبل السودان.
The comments of Sudan's army commander coincide with diplomatic efforts from the quartet mechanism, which include the US, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the UAE, all of whom are constantly working towards ending the conflict between the Sudanese army and RSF. The The Sudanese capital of Khartoum has been targeted by drone strikes for a third consecutive day by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Witnesses have reported hearing the sound of drones flying over the city early today morning, with the drones headed towards military facilities and the airport. Explosions have been heard shortly afterwards. The Khartoum International Airport, which has remained closed for over 2 years, was set to reopen this week, but had to postpone the reopening due to these attacks. Now we have a breaking news. According to reports, restrictions at 2 Moscow airports have now been lifted after a Russian aviation watchdog earlier stated that 2 Moscow airports suspended flights due to security reasons. Now we move on to our next news. At least 40 migrants, including children, have passed away after their boat sank off of the coast of Tunisia. The incident occurred near the Mediterranean port of Mahdia in central Tunisia, while the boat was carrying about 70 migrants. All the victims were reportedly from sub-Saharan Africa. About 30 migrants were rescued, but the remaining 40 lost their lives. The Tunisian authorities have now opened an investigation into the causes of the sinking. This tragic disaster comes as the country faces increasing pressure to manage the rising number of migrants fleeing conflict and poverty in search of a better opportunity in Europe. In response to the rising migration crisis, the European Union had signed a deal with Tunisia last year and provided about $118 million to reinforce migrant returns. The deal also focuses on combating smuggling and strengthening border control. Now we have another breaking news. Russia's former president and Security Council Deputy Chairman Dmitry Medvedev has accused U.S. President Donald Trump of aligning himself with the loony Europe in a sharp criticism of the U.S. leader's policies. Medvedev has continued to lash out at European leaders in their sanctions against Russia, claiming these measures have hurt Europe more than Russia. The Russian officials continue to question the effectiveness of Western sanctions, while maintaining that Russia's goals in Ukraine remain unchanged. Now we move back to Africa. Simone Ehvet Gbagbo, former First Lady of Ivory Coast and opposition candidate in the presidential election, has urged Ivorians to vote at a rally ahead of the campaign's conclusion. Gbagbo called on the crowd to seize the historic moment so that they could tell their children, "I too was there when the decision was made." She has further stressed the importance of a country where the people decide their own future, first before anyone else. Gbagbo has acknowledged the fear and anger some Ivorians felt, including calls for her to withdraw her candidacy, but reminded the crowd that without her, there would be no change. She has encouraged the people to participate in the election, calling it a historic moment.
On était à un moment important de l'histoire de la Côte d'Ivoire, ce moment-là où il faut choisir. Choisir, c'est ce jour-là, prendre son bulletin de vote, mettre, n'est-ce pas, dans l'urne, décider. Notre pays est arrivé à un moment de son existence qui est un moment historique.
And that's a wrap on Africa Brief. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.